Strike may end on Monday as federal government ASUU reach partial pact. Gombe government confirms 4 Lassa fever deaths. In international news, violence rocks France again as attacker kills 3 in French Christmas market. In sport, 19-year-old defeats Osholaike in table tennis at the National Sports Festival.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Seems like good news if nothing changes. Minister of Labour and Employment Dr. Chris Ngige has announced that the federal government and academic staff union of universities have reached a partial agreement to end the ongoing strike. That means students and lecturers may be back in class very soon. Ngige made the announcement at a reconciliation meeting in Abuja to find ways of resolving the strike which commenced last month. The minister says the meeting touched on some areas of understanding in implementation from the Memorandum of Action on which they agreed last year. He says they had identified one area where to look for funds for the revitalization of the universities, adding that the appropriate government organ would be contacted on the issue. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed gratitude to the Swiss government for its support in resuscitating the Nigerian economy, especially the return of illegally stolen funds. Buhari made the remark while receiving letters of credence from the Swiss ambassador to Nigeria, George Stohinia. The president noted that the facilitating roles the Swiss government had been playing in the Northeast, particularly in reaching out to internally displaced persons, had been most helpful. There was a heated argument in the Senate on Tuesday during the confirmation proceedings for 4 new nominees of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Lawmakers had disagreed on the appointment of the nominees, claiming the nominations were against the federal character principle. But just as the upper chamber was to go to the Committee of the Whole to consider the report, Victor Mayor Abgar Anambra State made a charge that all recent appointments into the commission had marginalized the Southeast. He said acting chairman Ibrahim Mago is from the Northeast. The recently confirmed secretary of the commission, Olanikpekun Olukoyede, is from the Southwest, and 2 of the nominees are from the North.
The Senate should be bold enough to return these nominations to the President with observations that Lawan Maman is from Northeast and the acting chairman of the commission is from Northeast.
The chamber was thrown into pandemonium as lawmakers rose from their seats and yelled at each other. After a closed-door session, Senate President Bukola Saraki said the lawmakers had agreed that the confirmation of nominees for the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, should be suspended for further legislative input.
The presidential nominee for EFCC, ICP, has any resolve to step down the consideration of the 2 reports for further legislative consultations on the nominees.
The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, the Young Progressives Party, Kingsley Moghalu, Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Obiageli Ezekwesili, Social Democratic Party, Donald Duke, and African Action Congress, Omoyele Sowore, were absent at the signing of a peace accord for the 2019 general elections. The event was organized by the National Peace Committee, headed by the former military head of state, Abdusalami Abubakar. President Muhammadu Buhari was present at the event, and no reasons have been given by the absentees for missing the event. Away from politics, the Gombe state government has confirmed the deaths of 4 Lassa fever patients from the 53 suspected cases recorded in the state. Acting state epidemiologist Nuhu Bile has advised members of the public to imbibe the culture of reporting cases of fever to hospitals for adequate action and treatment. The president of the Nigerian Institute of Management, Professor Olukunle Yoda, has called for the disclosure of remunerations of political leaders in the country. He He frowned on the refusal of National Assembly members to review their salaries and allowances. Speaking at the NIM's Continuing Learning and Development Program in Abuja, Iyoda accused politicians of elevating themselves above service to the nation. Iyoda lamented that Nigerian lawmakers are the highest paid in the world, yet Nigeria is not among the top 10 richest nations. He said they should not earn more than federal permanent secretaries. The Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency on Tuesday cautioned oil marketers against distorting the approved pump price of petrol. PPPRA Secretary Abdikadir Saidu says the agency is in charge of fixing the price of white petroleum product, petrol and kerosene. The approved cost of PMS at retail filling stations had not changed beyond 145 naira per litre. Saidu has also advised oil marketers to ensure there was no price distortion in their respective retail outlets, adding the PPPRA would continue to carry out its oversight function of monitoring depots and filling stations across the country. He said this would ensure strict adherence to the regulated price and stop other forms of fraudulent practices at retail outlets. Coming up, African stories. And later, international news. Violence rocks France again as attacker kills 3 in French Christmas markets.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. To update the Peace Pact signing, we can now report that PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar has signed the document. In African stories now, Rwandan authorities say a genocide suspect has been sent back to the country from Denmark to face criminal charges. Wenceslaus Kwazigarazieri is accused of carrying out atrocities during the 1994 genocide, and at least 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were killed. Rwandan prosecutors accused Kwazigarazieri of extermination, murder and crimes against humanity during the time he was a local official of the Coalition for the Defense of the Republic, a radical pro-Hutu party accused of inciting and carrying out violence. A court in Denmark ruled 3 months ago the Danish citizen could be extradited. 15-year-old Kwazigarazieri, maintaining his innocence, had been fighting extradition through court in Denmark, where he has been living for 17 years. The government of Mozambique says an audit of the civil service payroll has revealed about 30,000 ghost workers, some of whom were paid for jobs they had not done, while others were dead or fictitious. Civil Service Minister Carmelita Namashulia says the fraud has cost the nation an estimated $250,000 over 2 years. The audit was carried out to assess the effectiveness of officials in the country, which has been ranked as the 153rd most corrupt in last year's Transparency International's index. Two supporters of Martin Fayulu, a Democratic Republic of the Congo opposition presidential candidate, have been killed at a rally on Tuesday during clashes with police. DR Congo heads of the polls in 12 days, but tensions have risen before the crucial election. The Congolese Association for Access to Justice said 43 persons were wounded, including 15 by bullets at the rally venue in Lubumbashi. Reporters say police fired tear gas to disperse several hundreds of people who had gathered to welcome Fayulu. The opposition coalition Lamuka, which backs Fayulu, says up to 6 persons have been killed. Meanwhile, local officials say at least 10 persons have been killed in an overnight attack by a rebel group in the east of the DR Congo. This latest attack was also close to where health officials are struggling to contain the country's worst ever outbreak of the Ebola virus. The United Nations has called on gunmen in Libya who have seized control of Sharara, one of the country's biggest oil fields, to withdraw from the site so the won't compound the area's economic problems. The UN mission in Libya says although it understood their grievances, shutting the facility could lead to losses of more than $30 million a day. Armed men demanding better public services for the impoverished communities took over the facility in the southern Fezzan region 4 days ago. The UN urged Libyan authorities to improve services to the region. France has handed over more than 1,000 free assault rifles and 3 amphibious vehicles to the Central African Republic to shore up its military. Thousands of people have died in the violence, and rebel groups forced at least 700,000 people to flee their homes. The military aid was announced in Paris in November, along with almost $27.5 million in civilian assistance. The UN imposed an arms embargo on CAR 5 years ago after civil war broke out. But exemptions have been made, including last year when Russia supplied a similar consignment of weapons. Reports say Russia has also deployed hundreds of military advisors to the country where it has mining interests. After handing over the weapons, French Armed Forces Minister Florence Parly called on all countries, including Russia, to support African Union-led peace talks in CAR. Mauritius doctors have recommended prescription of physical activities instead of medications to tackle non-communicable diseases in the country. The country's Minister of Health and Quality of Life, Dr. Anwar Husnu, says in a speech at the workshop on the implementation of exercise prescription that his government is strongly committed to fight the non-communicable disease scourge in the country. He said this is worsened by low levels of physical activity. He says only a quarter of the adult population meets the World Health Organization WHO recommendations of 150 minutes of physical activity per week. Husnu said implementing this measure will change the way patients receive treatment and will contribute greatly to reducing public care burden in the country. When we return, international stories. Violence rocks France again as attacker kills 3 in French Christmas market. And later sport, 19-year-old defeats Oshunaike in table tennis at the National Sports Festival.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News happening around the world. France has suffered another attack when a gunman killed 3 persons and wounded a dozen others at a Christmas market in the city of Strasbourg. A manhunt began in earnest in northeastern France early on Wednesday. The country has raised its security threats to the highest alert level. As police search for the suspect, German police also tightened border controls around the Rhine River. Police say the suspect, 29-year-old Strasbourg-born Cherry Chicot, was known to the intelligence services as a potential security risk. Deputy Interior Minister Laurent Nunez says Chicot might have fled from France, even though he might have been injured by security forces. The Deputy Minister also said the suspect had a police record and has been in jail several times as recently as the end of 2015. Interior Minister Christopher Castaner said the gunman exchanged shots with the security forces twice as he escaped. The Paris prosecutor said the motive for the attack was not known. No one immediately claimed responsibility, but the U.S.-based site intelligence group, which monitors jihadist websites, said Islamic State supporters were celebrated. Meng Wanzhou, chief financial officer of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei Technologies, was released on bail by a Canadian court on Tuesday, 10 days after her arrest in Vancouver at the request of U.S. authorities. Meng Wanzhou, daughter of Huawei's founder, faces U.S. claims that she misled multinational banks on transactions that misled banks and put them at risk of violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. A Vancouver, British Columbia court granted Meng a U.S. $7.5 million bail to Meng. She has been held since her arrest on December the 1st. The courtroom erupted in applause when the decision was announced. Meng cried and hugged her lawyers. Meng will have to abide by the court's bail condition, one of which is for the 46-year-old to wear ankle monitor and stay at home from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Meng's arrest has put further soured Chinese relations with the United States and Canada at a time when tensions were already high over a trade war and U.S. accusations of Chinese spying. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday he would intervene in the U.S. Justice Department case against Meng if it would serve national security interests or help close a trade deal with China. British Prime Minister Theresa May faces a confidence vote in her leadership by MPs in her own Conservative Party after chaos began to roar her European Union exit deal. So much now plagues the deal that has opened up the prospect of a messy no-deal Brexit or a referendum that could reverse Brexit. Britain is due to exit on March the 29th next year. Graham Brady, the chairman of the party's so-called 1922 committee, said the threshold of 15% of the Parliamentary Conservative Party seeking a confidence vote had been reached. A vote will be taken at the House of Commons later this evening. May could lose her position as Prime Minister if 158 of her 315 MPs vote against her, but a mutiny could also help sustain her through this crisis. Right groups and some of affected Syrian people say the government has been using a little-known anti-terrorism law to seize property from dissidents and their families as it takes back control of areas that were held by rebel groups. Now that Syria's conflict has stabilized and President Bashar al-Assad again controls the biggest cities, it is left to be seen how he will handle the areas where the 2011 uprising against him fled. International attention has focused on policies such as the legislation known as Law 10 that could eventually enable the government to dispossess people in the opposition strongholds worst damaged in the war. But human rights groups say while Law 10 has not yet been put into effect, A separate anti-terrorism law has already been used to seize properties, including from people who had no hand in violence. This year's Time magazine Person of the Year has been bestowed on a group of journalists that includes murdered Saudi writer Jamal Khashoggi and 2 Reuters reporters imprisoned by Yemen's government. The magazine says it named the group of journalists as Person of the Year because the idea of truth as critical to democracy is under assault. Also honored is the founder of Philippine news website. He has been vocal in criticizing that country's authoritarian government. A Maryland, USA newspaper is also among the honored. This is the first time in its 95-year history that Time magazine has honored people in its own profession. The honored distinction is intended to recognize the person, group, or idea that had the greatest influence on world events that year. It has been given to a wide range of influences from U.S. civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. and Queen Elizabeth to Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany, who was honored before the start of World War II. Up next, sports. 19-year-old defeats Shonaike in table tennis at the National Sports Festival. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Veteran Olympian Funke Oshonaike suffered another defeat at the ongoing 2018 National Sport Festival in Abuja, where she was sent packing 4-3 in the quarterfinals of the women's singles table tennis event by a known youngster, Nimota Aregbeshola from Lagos State. Oshonaike and another veteran player, Segun Toriola, representing Akwa Ibom State, crashed out in the mixed doubles event to team in the last 8. The Super Sand Eagles are now in the semi-finals of the ongoing 2018 CAF Beach Soccer AFCON in Egypt after beating Tanzania 4-2 in the last Group B match on Monday. The two-time winners placed second in Group B with 2 wins and a defeat, pending the results of the match between Senegal and Libya. And that's CNN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, cnnafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CNN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.